Next, the January 1963 issue of Town and Country magazine called it the perfect house for a bachelor, but a murder would mar its picture perfect image. Historian, educator, and blogger Tim Gilmore sat down with First Coast Connect host Anne Schindler to share the story of the Bobby Jacobs house.
In 1974, the oceanfront bachelor pad belonging to Jacksonville's construction king became the springboard for a bloodbath. It's one of hundreds of installments of the Jack Psycho Geo blog, and I'm joined now by author, educator, and historian Tim Gilmore, who created the blog. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Ann. How's it going?
Good. It's good to have you here. So this is a house that's still standing in Atlantic Beach.
Yeah.
Created by one of Jacksonville's most renowned and famous architects. Tell us about it.
That's right. Yeah. It's one of Taylor Hardwick's houses. And Taylor Hardwick is best known probably for what's now the Jesse Ball DuPont Center downtown. Did a number of great, what are now called mid-century modern residences. This house is heavily based on glass and overhanging eaves and focusing on horizontal lines. And the swimming pool itself is actually kind of an integral part of the overall geometry of the house.
And that's because this was a party house.
Yes, that's right. It was a party house, and when it was built, early 1960s, this was called Seminole Beach, which was later become the northern part of Atlantic Beach from about 17th Street north. And back then, it was secluded. It was wild. It was very private. It was a party house for Bobby Jacobs, whose pool parties were absolutely famous, not just here, but in fact up and down the East Coast.
Wow. Dude was a bit of a playboy.
He was. Yeah, he absolutely was. He was responsible for the construction of lots of the best known buildings in Jacksonville at the time. Some of those are gone now. Thunderbird Motor Hotel and Roosevelt Mall, also the older Independent Life building, the Universal Marion building, and he built malls and other enterprises all up and down the East Coast.
And this home wasn't the site of a crime, but it kind of led to a crime. What happened to Bobby Jacobs?
Yeah, it's there's still a lot of mystery surrounding this, and it's what happened is it's still it's pretty strange, and it has lots of questions unanswered, probably unanswerable now. He had dinner down the street with a friend, and when he came out about 10:30 at night, he had a flat tire, and there's someone who had been staying with that friend off and on, kind of shadowy sort of character, unclear what his relationship was to any of these people, who offered to fix the tire if Bobby Jacobs would give him a ride down to the exit ramp at Seminole Beach, which was close to Jacobs' house. So Jacob said okay, and when they got down to that point, this person, whose name was Raymond Beauchesne, took Jacobs into his house, handcuffed him,
into his own house?
Into Jacobs' own house.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Handcuffed him, shot and killed his dog, and demanded in context, kind of paltry sum of $25,000, and said he would kill Jacobs if Jacobs didn't give him $25,000. Jacobs was, uber wealthy. It's kind of a strange situation
Lowball.
already.
Yeah.
Jacob said he had some money there, but he had more money at one of his other apartments on the other side of town, the London Town Apartments on Lane Avenue. So they went over there, and when they got there, Jacobs ran out of the car, went up to a couple of guards, said he had been kidnapped. Beauchesne, the kidnapper, stepped out of the car, went into the guard shack. He shot an armed guard, shot Jacobs, and then he shot himself in the throat. It took Jacobs 2 years to die from those wounds. His heart was damaged, and it actually impinged on arguing the case against the person he had dinner with earlier in the night for setting up this extortion.
He was accused of setting it up.
He was, yeah. His name was George Jefferson Willard. He eventually really got away with it because Jacobs was never able to testify, and attorneys said that if he couldn't testify, they couldn't, the case depended on him. Willard went on to live a pretty good life. He was president of the Florida Restaurant Association, has recipes published in Bon Appetit, and died. I think he died in 2010.
I love all the weird wormholes that you
Always.
explore. So, was there some connection to the homicide investigator, perhaps that he'd been involved in a cover up of another crime?
So many more wormholes attached to that. 10 years before this, so the murder, the shooting happened in 1974, and Bobby Jacobs died in 1976. 10 years before the shooting, a banker's son named Glenn Monroe, really prominent family, had been found shot dead at a dune on Seminole Beach, right now where the walkway, somewhere around where the walkway from 17th Street north onto the beach is. That case looked like it initially had tons of leads, that the investigation was making fast ground, but the investigation was in the hands of Duval County's chief homicide investigator, a guy named J.C. Patrick, who was famous for doing things like breaking the ribs of the people he was interviewing and taking payoffs. The murder was never solved, and 1982, so this is a number of years after all of these people, actually including J.C. Patrick, who was actually killed by his son when his son came home and found Patrick beating his mother one night. All of these people are now dead in 1982. There are 3 former homicide investigators who claimed that in the mid-'60s they had been fired for trying to expose corruption in the sheriff's office. And in 1982, their stories came to light. One of those stories was that Patrick took a payoff to cover up Bobby Jacobs's involvement. Unclear what that involvement was, if it even was true, in Glenn Monroe's murder in 1964. So,
God, it all comes full circle.
it's everything. It's all these stories connect up underground. It's crazy. It really is. But they're also full of holes, and there's a lot of things you can speculate, and you can use logic and evidence to speculate, but you can't necessarily know the truth 100% a lot of times here.
Well, Tim Gilmore, without you, we would never even know half of all of these stories, and it's always a pleasure to explore your blog, Jack Psycho Geo.
Yep.
And thanks once again for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.